So first, to start off with some warm-up and background questions, I just was wondering, can you tell me a little bit about the founding story of Develop Africa and what inspired you to start or lead this organization?
Yeah, okay. Basically, my background is in a sense similar to yours, even though when my parents actually got married here in the States in 1961,
Hmm.
and they were both students studied here, and then they went back to Sierra Leone. And so I was born and I grew up in Sierra Leone. I came to the States after I got married. And so I've been here in the States since 1995. I went to grad school.
Hmm.
Um, After grad school, you get a job. My wife and I went back to visit our family in Sierra Leone. This was around 2005. This was several years later. And we met, even though we grew up and we understood what poverty was like, we understood what it was like for people to be struggling to get to school. But um, since we had lived in the US for about, I think it was like 9 or 10 years at that time, and then when so we were in a sense isolated, and but when we went back and we saw again what poverty was like, and we had an incident where a family with a little girl came, they were just begging on the streets, and so we very naively felt we can do something to help kids like those that little girls go to school and stay in school. So we started, registered Develop Africa as a 501(c)(3) charity in March 2006,
Hmm.
and just started off with just thinking, school supplies and scholarships. So that was really the founding motivation. While there are many other organizations doing excellent work, we felt like we could do our own bit to help some kids stay in school or even start school, which we have done because there have been kids or families we've run into where they were basically just helping their mother and not even going to school. So that's one of the founding things which we've had very clearly on our minds. Remove the barriers, whatever's stopping people from going to school, remove those barriers and help them get the education because we realize education will open so many doors for them in the future. Sorry if it's a long-winded answer, but it's a
No.
topic I could talk about easily
Yeah,
for
for sure, for
for
sure. I
for
mean,
for,
honestly, the
for
longer the answers, like the more material I have to work with, so feel free to talk as long as you'd like.
okay.
Yeah, but on that note, you mentioned that your core founding missions was to help people go to school and stay in school. I was wondering, over time, has that mission evolved to include other aspects or remove other aspects? How has that changed over time?
Excellent question. I think over the years we've realized that, and this is actually something which is very much on my mind because I'm also responding to another interview on the same topic, which I'm doing like an audio interview. But as we all know, it takes more than one thing to be successful in life. Um, so even though we started off just focusing, okay, here's what we're going to do: school supplies, books, scholarships. Then an incident happened, which was devastating, which was one of the kids that we're helping go to school passed away from malaria. When this happened, it really shook me to the core because I realized that we needed to maybe, so we had a kind of like, blinders on, like this is all we're going, we're just focusing on this. And then somebody passes away that we're sending to school. We realized we needed to do more than just the narrow focus. Our goal had to be more of what are the obstacles that people are facing with regard to their education and how can we remove those obstacles. If malaria or the potential of getting sick from malaria is an obstacle, then we need to also think about that. Um, and so, for example, we ended in a situation where during the Ebola crisis, where um, a family that were supporting their kids, helping them with education, their parents passed away from Ebola. Their mom was a nurse. She contracted Ebola, came home, and her dad as well passed away. And we
Mm.
realized that, we had like several orphans, and we had the opportunity to start an orphanage, which we did for a number of years. And then we phased out that orphanage. So to get back to the question, I think um, our response has to be more holistic and say, what are the challenges that people are facing? What are the roadblocks they're facing? And see how we can reduce or eliminate those roadblocks.
I see. Yeah. And then in addition to that, I mean, as an addition, what are the biggest challenges that your team faces in achieving your mission and as you expand that mission?
I think one of the biggest challenges is establishing systems. As you grow as an organization, whether even if it's a small business, I think organizations, businesses face the challenges of consistency. You may do something very well, and then you realize, okay, for me to repeat the same thing next year, I need to figure out what did I do well the first time, and can I make that into some kind of a system so I can repeat the same success or get better the next year.
Right, absolutely.
So I think, but we run into a problem where we may not know exactly how we succeeded, and then we do not know. But then it becomes a question where, like, so if you have accomplished it as a person, Sonia, and then you realize, okay, I like to duplicate this into other chapters. Well,
Mm,
then you try to share with the other people that this is what it took to get to the initial results, and this is quote unquote as this is what's going to be our success manual or our standard operating procedures for success. You
mm.
share this with the rest of the people, and then the other people feel like, I don't know if I want to do that. No, I don't want to go door to door. I don't really like baking. I don't
Yeah,
like, yeah, and then so they move away from that. They decide, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't really like talking to people. And so then you end up with a situation where, I mean, you don't achieve the same results because the other members of the team don't have the same vision and they're
right.
not as committed to making sure it happens. So that's one thing we faced where making sure people understand the vision, they're committed to it. And I guess in this day and age, they may, not everybody will feel passionate like you might feel about it. And that's life. And we have to be able to deal with that. But then getting people to understand that this is what we need to make results consistent and they're called best practices for a reason. And every
Mhm.
organization, every business has had, goes through these growing pains.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and honestly, like I also have that experience. Sorry to butt in here, but with clubs and organizations that I've worked with, definitely people
Hmm.
you work with were not going to have the same amount of passion or the same amount of like
Yeah.
consistency or drive. And I feel like the best part of being like a leader or someone who works with other people is that you kind of it's one of your responsibility to convince people to believe in what you believe in as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like that's what you've probably succeeded in doing as I'm here and I also want to help you with that mission. And I had just a question about your personal work. What is something about your work or the communities that you serve that most people wouldn't expect?
That people wouldn't expect.
Something surprising or new that you've discovered through your line of work.
I think I've found out that not people sometimes are not committed. They are not prepared to make the sacrifices to get to success.
Mhm.
Um, and people sometimes just want things handed to them on a platter. Like to get to where you've arrived, you've worked extremely hard. You've made personal sacrifices. You've made sacrifices of your time. And sometimes people want the same results, but they're not prepared to make those sacrifices. And if you drill that down to the people that we're helping, so you tell people, hey, guess what? If you're going to succeed in your education, you're going to have to work hard and you're going to have to make some good grades. And they're like, well, they're not really prepared maybe to make those sacrifices, to put in the hours of time it takes to get the good grades, because you need the good grades because the good grades will open up doors for you in the future.
Mhm.
So if you drill down and tell people, here's the big picture, but you have to take daily steps to get there. I think that's one of the challenges, which I guess is not maybe surprising, but sometimes people are not prepared or motivated to make the sacrifices. And
Yeah.
that sometimes really surprises me. You tell people, hey, follow these steps and your life will be better. And they're like, well, I don't know if I really want to do that, or I don't. So I don't know if sometimes they don't make the connection between 1 + 1 = 2. So that's something that I'm still, surprises me when I see that sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I was wondering, have you had any moments in work that truly changed your perspective or a story that deeply moved or inspired you?
I think the story which I've shared about the malaria incident
Yeah.
was something which really, just deeply touched me and changed the way it took me a day or two to recover from that because and I realize, I mean, everybody, you realize you're not going to change everybody, or you're not going to be perfect, right? You're going to fail in some areas, but sometimes you're supposed to just maybe learn from what's considered failure and figure out like, okay, well, that happened. And that's one thing that really just kind of changed my perspective. It helped me to be more flexible in life, because sometimes we start off with the vision, I'm only going to do this, but then you realize that, well, I need to adjust that a little bit and be open to doing something else. So it's not like I'm just going to take on everything. I'm not going to be doing cancer research, and I'm not going to end up trying to, help the disabled, or, do everything, but at least I'd have to make some slight changes to the mission and to make sure we achieve our goals.
Yeah, yeah, I admire that. I mean, it can be definitely, I know that Developed Africa has been working with school supplies since 2006, so probably making that jump from working with that to combating like bigger or, more serious issues like health issues can be probably really difficult. And I'm honestly like I admire you a lot for taking that step. And speaking of that, you mentioned some failures in your work that people ought to get over. I was wondering what motivates you to keep doing your work even when it gets difficult?
Yeah, I think personally, my parents provided a great example to me. My dad was involved in development work for many years, and I think I learned from him the importance of sacrifice, the importance of um, thinking of others, and I think I grew up in that environment, and I just kind of inculcated those values, and that's something that still motivates me today, where um, I guess for many people, they would just maybe think about, they'll just be just thinking only about the American dream and being very, um, I don't want to say the focus will just limited on my goals. And it may be, for some people, they may find it different to think that way, where you're thinking about other goals or something, things regarding maybe impacting other lives to leaving a legacy. But for me, that really motivates me. And I guess not everybody thinks that way. Some people are not cut out for that. And I get that. Not everybody wants to be a firefighter, or not everybody wants to go fight a war overseas, or. So what I think, as we find ourselves, we find our calling, then those things, it's easier to be able to do that because you have some of the motivation from inside, and being able to see the success, the progress really just kind of encourages you, motivates you. You look and say, okay, I've been able to accomplish this much. And it fuels you so that you think, I can keep doing this and keep pressing on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the society in Silicon Valley, especially, it's very narrow-minded. We're all trying to get through our goals, get that job, get that college.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely more fulfilling to work for other people. This is just my mindset. But working to help other people who can't help themselves is honestly the most I've ever gotten, rather than, just my school or just my extracurriculars. So for sure. I mean, I'm obviously a student that's worked with Develop Africa and figured out ways to raise
Mhm.
money and supplies for your organization. But what advice do you have for young people trying to start their own initiatives?
Well, find something that you're passionate about, find something that speaks to you, maybe something that you connect with deeply, because you are going to need that motivation in the difficult moments. So if it's not something you care about, then you're probably just going to do it for a week and then drop it after that. But if it's something, a cause that you really believe in, and I think that would really help. Also, make sure you develop a good network of people or friends around you.
Mm.
Sometimes it's hard to find other people who are your own tribe or people who think like you, but being able to have, even if they don't necessarily believe in the cause, but they're just like your good friends. I think it's always good to have those because I probably would not be where I am right now if I didn't have like friends, like just good friends. And these are friends who are long-term friends who I've known for many, many years. So for any young person, I would definitely encourage that. Try to develop some good friendships early, because they'll be very useful to you in 10, 20, 30 years. So I think those are the two things I would definitely encourage.
All right, thank you. I'm going to kind of wrap up the session with a
Mhm.
couple of closing questions, but one is looking back on your journey, what do you wish you had known when you had started?
I wish I had known that it would cost a lot.
Mm.
Um, I think this is true of, I guess, every person who has started an organization. It's true of every person who has decided to get married, right? And then you find out if you talk to your parents or any married person, you say, are there things you didn't really know you would, did you know marriage would be as tough or raising a family would be as tough? And they tell you, I had no idea.
Mm.
And I think so it's a universal thing. I wish somebody had said to me, you are going to lose some sleep. There are going to be moments where you try to pull out your hair. Well, I don't really have any hair to hold on to and pull out. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I keep it short. But anyway, I just like my look when my hair is shorter.
Mm.
But I think on a more serious note, if you're going to start off on a journey, count the cost, right? I think there's a verse in the Bible that says, you should count the cost before you go into war or you undertake an endeavor. So I
Mm.
wish I had been able to better count the cost. Not that I would have necessarily regretted,
Mm.
but so that's like a definite thing. And like I said, it applies not just to an organization, to family, to anything. I think it's good to sit down and count the cost so that when you decide I'm going to do this, you're going to stay with it on the long term and you're going to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, thank you. And finally, what does meaningful service mean to you?
Um, I think meaningful service would, I'd kind of connected to one of your questions, like something that you feel passionate about,
Mm.
that will give you a sense of fulfillment and pride. Like you'd be like, I am so happy that I did this because it has to be, I guess it can be meaningful to the people who you're helping, but you want it to be also meaningful to you. If it's not meaningful to you, then there won't be a motivation, I think, as much of a motivation to continue doing it.
Mm.
So I think if it's meaningful to others and it's also meaningful to you, something you're passionate about, something that you feel good about doing, I think there's going to be a win-win on both sides if the service is also meaningful to you as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Quick interview, but those are all my questions I have for you today.
Okay, can I ask you a couple questions
Yeah, go
about the
ahead.
service learning project? Because you told me you're doing as part of what is service learning? Did you say justice? Could you tell me some more about that, like
Oh,
the
yes.
service learning project at
At my
school?
school, I go
Mhm.
to a Christian high school, so we
Okay,
have a Bible class, and in junior year or senior year, the Bible class starts changing from just learning about the Bible to putting it into application. And so
okay,
there's like three branches of service learning, which all have to do with service. The branch
okay,
that I'm in is called justice, and the point of the class is to create an initiative that's going to address a problem that you're passionate about. So this was what I decided to do for my project. There's also outreach, service learning outreach, which is a branch that focuses on working as a class to go to organizations and working all together. But this
okay.
class is kind of focused on creating your own service project and managing that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Um, What are the other projects that your other classmates are doing right now?
I know that one of my friends, she's doing a project where she's raising funds to create blankets for homeless people because
Okay.
she works at this fabric store called Joann's, and she was like, "Oh, how could I use this fabric to help the underprivileged?" So there's that. Another student is working on raising awareness in general about like drug overdose awareness.
Okay.
Yeah, and all of these projects have some personal connection to the author of the
Mhm.
projects. So I think that also plays into what you said about motivation. Yeah.
Mhm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What are you planning to do, or what are you planning to study when you go to college?
Oh, I want to study either public policy or political science or something like that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Why did you decide on those areas, or what made you lean towards that direction?
Yeah, for sure. I honestly, I don't know 100% what I want to do in the future, but I know I want it
Mhm.
to do with like helping people. And I feel like that my skill set currently, it has a lot to do with communication and outreach and
Mhm.
things like that. And I want to study public policy so I could figure out how I can put these ideas into action in the real world and kind of like figure out like what you're doing. How do I do that? And I feel like public policy can equip me with that. And then political science is because I have an affinity for like debate. I like doing debate, and I feel like if I was to ever try to become a lawyer, political science has a relative importance to that. So there's that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're very articulate. I mean, I'm like, obviously, like you just said about debate and public policy. I think those are just excellent areas to get into. And yeah, sure. I look forward to just, staying connected and,
Yeah.
talking some more about, what you're doing. And you definitely have an amazing future ahead of you.
Thank you so much for that. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely.
Okay. So that concludes my side.
Okay. Okay. All right. I look forward to staying connected and we'll talk some more later. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you so
All right.
much. Bye.
Very
Have
good
a
to
good
meet
day.
you. Take care.
Really
Bye
nice
bye.
to meet you.